All right. Good evening to those of you on the East Coast. Good afternoon to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And as you can see from the title, we have another, great guest on tap this evening. As you all know, we had a Farpoint happening this past weekend. And it's my pleasure to bring on a good friend of mine who is, doing his thing at not just Farpoint but many other shows. Want to welcome Eric Suggs of ARTWAY Alliance. Let me bring him on. See, 1 second. The suspense is killing us, right? All right, hold on. There we go. All right, what's up, man? How you doing?
Good, man, good. And I'm actually in my office, and the lights are on a timer, so gotta dim things real quick because I was like, all right, let's see how well I come up. But thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Anytime, anytime. So, talk to me, man. As I said, we had Farpoint happen this past weekend. How was the show for you?
The show was good. Farpoint is I want to say, whew, maybe the last 4 years, and maybe even 5 years now, but I want to say four, that they're a huge supporter of what Our Way Alliance does. And they actually adopted us as like their local charity. And so some of what Farpoint does and have done for years, even before I was introduced to them, they have a main nonprofit that they work with, and from donations that people give to art auctions that they host to a lot of other things that they do in the community, um, they do such great work and raise money. And then when the opportunity presented, I was presented at a show through my contact there, and they asked if we would be interested. And my first question to anybody, if they're like, "Oh, you see what we do? What kind of space can you give us, and how many hours worth of programming do you want?" And after that, it's all the rest is history.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in speaking to that, can you, talk to? I mean, I'm aware of what you guys do, but can you, speak to, the origin story, if you will, of Artway Alliance?
Oh yeah, well, we started. It started in a chance meeting um, of a young man who was on a train. I was on my way home from work, and I was doodling. He saw what I was doing, asked me if I was a teacher. I said no because I wasn't, and it kind of stuck with me. And from that, and then talking to a bunch of folks that already knew who was into art and pop art and media art, to be specific, um, I was like, well, maybe I can do something on this convention front to help artists to kind of save some money in booth space because it can be pricey when you're setting up at these shows. And so from the day that I had this run in with this young man, I said, if ever I come across that situation again, I want to be able to be like, where's your mom? Where's your dad? Here's a business card. Um, Let them know this is a thing. Like if you into art, if you're into drawing, if you're into writing, any of this stuff, especially if we're talking comic books and graphic novels, then I want to be able to say I know individuals. Plus, I'm a part of an organization that is its mission is to be able to help people sharpen their skills at different levels. And it's not just kids. I mean, we've worked with teenagers, we've worked with adults, folks who already have their own thing. And again, at the moment when someone's working with us and they already have their own brand that they're putting out there, is just a great connection and synergy and bridges that we kind of create when we're doing these shows and working together. And yeah, Farpoint has just been one of those stable conventions, along with a few others, that have really been like a huge supporter of us just trying to, get the message out there that, art, whether it's something that you do on your own, or if you do with a team, or you happen to be in school and you're studying STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, that we can add the arts to that to create STEAM, and then we're talking about a whole nother bag at that point. So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. And and speaking of further to that, just that idea of what the mission of the organization is. Can you also speak to how, I guess more so with the obviously we're in an interesting time, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but with this current show, it presented some challenges, as with any con right now, because of the challenges that any con is facing currently. So can you speak also to that, perhaps of how the landscape is looking right now in terms of the cons that you've thus far in the current landscape that we've had, how they've been, and some things that you've had to adapt, obviously, under those circumstances, because I know in those environments, a lot of time, you have, because you have those environments where you have like a lot of kids, and you have parents and families trying to still be able to implement the mission that you guys have, while still under the circumstances, trying to still be safe, if you will.
Yeah, and you just hit it right there. Just being safe, man. Um, Being responsible for, like, if we're going to do this, how much room will we be able to have so the people do feel comfortable? Because that's the first thing, is trying to get that comfort level, because so many people have been starving for shows to come back. And I want to say last year was really the first year of kind of seeing the landscape in so many different shows at different levels, and the actual space that's being hosted as well. um, a lot of these places are making sure that safety is the number one priority, and I know it's frustrating for so many people who may not be vaccinated, or whatever, what have you. But it's all about safety. It's all about safety, because the last thing we will want to be a part of is something that would get any one person sick, or anyone that I'm working with sick. And so with that, them. So the shows having their protocol based on the state that they're in, and possibly even the city that they're in, saying that, oh, you need to make sure you have your vaccination card available, if it's a picture, and they check those. Most of the shows that I've done, 100% masks, which then means the challenge at that point is being able to speak. And so, the challenge with that is just being able to speak through the mask, and people to be able to hear you clearly. And so, it's definitely, we've worked through a few issues with that, by just going on Amazon and sort of purchasing like a microphone and a speaker, just to be able to have something that we can, people will be able to hear us a lot clearer. And but the spaces that we've been in, they've been able to provide not only space for us to be able to set up, but the room itself. It's a lot wider, a lot of shows. So you can see where at one point, if you've gone to one show consistently, you may notice that things are a lot more spread out. And again, that's giving, the crowd, because that's the main part. It's not just, us setting up, obviously, because we wouldn't be just there setting up and nobody showing up. But when we're doing these shows, especially the bigger show you go, that they are, the important thing for them hosting these shows is that you can see that there was care and thought that was put into the show itself. So you may not have as many dealers or Artist Alley members, but it's a reason why. It's not just because, oh, we don't like you, or we didn't like what you did the last year. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with spacing this thing out so that you're safe, the people that you're interacting with are safe, and then even going into that space, I highly encourage people who are doing shows to maybe do some scouting, like go out to some shows just to kind of check out the landscape of what people are doing. Because the one thing that I've seen an uptick in, and this is not just doing Comic-Con shows, are QR codes. QR codes are
For sure.
on
For sure.
everything,
For
everywhere.
sure.
But it's the saving grace, man. Like if you can process that transaction using the QR code, or if you can hook somebody into your link tree or your website or wherever, then scanning that thing is allowing for you to do two things. You only got to print it one time. You don't need to print a mass, 50, 60 copies of flyers and things like that. I mean, you can still do that, obviously, but if folks are using their smartphones to kind of engage, then you can actually get your instant followers like right then, especially if you're talking to them. And I think that's the other part, because what I was hearing a lot of from Farpoint this weekend was that they were thanking us. Like attendees were just like, thank you for coming out. They've seen us before, but it's just like, thank you for just for coming out so that they have something that, that they can connect with and people to talk to. Because so many folks that are part of these communities, all, before the movie worlds and universes started to be what they are now, you know, you used to get stuffed in lockers for this kind of stuff, or
Right, right,
it
right.
wasn't the cool thing. It wasn't a cool thing, right? And now it's like such an open, and it's still evolving, because there with any one community, that community needs to check itself at times to be sure that it's not being the bully that it may have been under the weight of before it became popular. So,
No,
but
I hear you.
from doing shows in the QR codes, and then even making sure that you wrap a lot of your prints, if you're someone who sells prints, or if you're someone who sells anything else, that you have this stuff sort of pre-packaged, which goes a long way as well to the presentation of the booth or whatever your setup is. People notice that kind of stuff. They see the detail that you put into this, and a lot of folks really do respect that. Hey, I like what you have here. I'm connecting with you, and I see this other thing. I think that's just another thing that subconsciously people may not pick up on unless they really see, like, oh yeah, this person went to great lengths to make sure that anything that they're being handled is being handled with the same care that the show is giving. So, I encourage anyone who's doing shows to sort of scout to see, what you may need as supplies. Supplies can be completely different, where you may not need to print a bunch of postcards or flyers. You may need to go get a bunch of crystal bags from your art supply store, if you can find them.
Definitely, definitely. And, in that same regard, I feel like you must be psychic, because that's actually where my next question was going to, shift off to. And that's just basically, just some of the things of uh, how things, how you execute shows with your organization. Um, have presented new things for you to see that actually works, and some trends that you're seeing that may carry forward even as things go back to quote unquote normal. So we're seeing with a lot of shows that they're really going to start taking advantage of a lot of that meta stuff, a lot of the digital content. We're seeing a big shift in that. So perhaps with what you have with your organization, can you speak to that too? Of also, is that something that you have eyed or considered, or maybe in terms of like all the logistics that are involved with that it's kind of like way down the line in
Yeah,
terms of something that you're looking at?
yeah. No, I mean, it's not anything new that isn't already done, but it's something that we haven't done. And I was speaking to some folks this weekend to say, what we're really missing is 100% footage of any one workshop that we've done. Now, in certain settings, we wouldn't be able to get like a full like run of like what a workshop may have been or a panel discussion. But like Farpoint, for instance, we had a room all to ourselves. Now, had I have done a little bit more digging and thinking, I would have set up tripods to be able to record sessions and then edit them, and then actually have those be links that you could see that will be right on our website. Where, oh, for everything that we may have done, if at all possible, that there's a video that is connected right to that. So then whether it's someone who was able to attend and be like, man, this person mentioned this thing and I forgot what it was, to go back and look at that. Because especially with one workshop in particular that we did that was brand new, it was sketch card designing for freelance artists. And it was being presented by a really good friend of mine, Darren Soto, who was introduced to the sketch card game as far as a job, a career. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's been 3 years for him now where he's been working with Upper Deck on a variation of different card decks that they have licenses for. And I believe the very first one he did was X Files. And the room is divided. So you have some adults that are like, oh, X Files. And then you have some kids like, what's the X? What? And that was just very, very funny. But ultimately, he was able to sort of go down a rabbit hole of how he got started. And those are the types of people that I love working with, who aren't afraid to kind of pull the veil back a little to kind of show like, there's not a huge secret, but not a lot of people know that, as an from an artist perspective, to be a freelance artist, like, how do I get into sketch cards? I didn't realize this was even a thing, but it's huge. It's huge on so many different levels that I'm even still being introduced to how deep the rabbit hole really is for the sketch card community. And fanaticism, fandom, all of this that kind of boils up into this thing that we see and we participate in. I'm always empowered and encouraged when I'm learning something that I did not know about at all, but know that there are folks that are sort of like in my wheelhouse that I can connect to and say, hey, are you free to come out and sort of do a presentation and do a light kind of like, this is how I go through my process to even do sketch cards. And to then kind of go from like, this is how you do it, and to have somebody in the audience who was a collector and an artist. They were like, this is absolutely what I've been looking for, because I've been thinking about getting into the sketch card game, but had no idea how to do it. And this was like the perfect kind of like blend of right person, right time, right con, to actually present this. And, with the success of that and anything else that we're trying to do, I absolutely do want to be sure to be able to get some of like the full footage of like the discussions and everything else that may have happened, and have that be part of like, you can go to our website, click on the link. If you missed it, here it is right here for you to kind of like check out, or get back that reference that you like. He mentioned a name or mentioned a company, and just be able to continue to be the connector beyond the show that we may have just done.
For sure, for sure. And in speaking to, speaking to that, I guess the next topic that I would have is the the next frontier, or another frontier, if you will. I know offline, that you were talking about a lot of things that are kind of, brewing, so to speak.
Yep.
Obviously, I know that there's some things that you can't comment on right now because they're still in early days, but are there some other things that you're excited to, discuss, that perhaps you can announce, that are you able to, chat about or reveal?
Uh,
And it may even just be upcoming shows too, if that's the case too.
Yeah, well, there's one, and I'm hoping to have a conversation very very soon. Um, is HBCU Con. They've they've held virtual conventions, and if I'm wrong, please in the comments or whatever, or later say like,
Right.
hey, but I believe 2022 is their first year in person at Bowie State, and I am absolutely excited for this show to take place because you can never have enough blurredom for me. Never. I mean, we have BlurredCon, which is its thing, um, and then HBCU being what it's going to be, uh, and then it's being held at a college, which kind of gives it at least, and I obviously haven't attended this thing yet because this hasn't happened, but it sort of gives that whole edutainment kind of connection that can be completely different than any one show. All shows have their own themes and stand alone and are great in their own respects. But when you start going down the path of, having educators and entertainers that's where I get the whole edutainment thing come into play. That speaks directly to my heart because it actually speaks to that 10-year-old boy that was on the metro and my 10-year-old self who Saturday morning VCR recording TV tray and a ream of paper. Like that was my Saturday. After the shows were done, I could go back and rewind and pause or do what you know. That is how I learned how to just kind of keep up with just drawing. Myself and my sister, we were latchkey kids. So between VCR and Nintendo, like those are the things that kept us kind of like, in the house, just being latchkey kids, right? And so, being able to be part of something that can sort of give people some insight to say, there are full degrees that you can get in Bowie State. Absolutely has one of those degrees that you can get, and the expansion of content creators having the opportunity at a very young age to have access to things like YouTube where you can learn how to do this stuff. Because I had to wait for either Square City to come on or Bob Ross, but I wasn't a painter. But I love to watch the
And
process.
we really aging ourselves talking. I can't believe
Oh
it
yeah,
talking about Bob Ross, man. Look, yeah, we have folks out there that don't know who Bob Ross is. I'm like, oh man, bro.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
so
But
yeah,
but
nah,
that's what
good.
Google is for. That's what Google is for. YouTube, all that. But having a show like an edutainment type of a show that's going to give you like here's the career path, here's the educational path, because those are two things that if my 10-year-old self or going into from the middle school going into high school can kind of say it's a lot. It gives me a different affirmation, similar to the affirmation that people get for sports. And I love sports. But for art, you don't have the same kind of like trade off. Really, isn't there if you don't ask questions and know that there are places that can offer building skill or being able to say, oh yeah, your favorite show was created by somebody that looks like you, or someone that looks like you actually is working on this show as a writer, as a fill-in artist, or whatever. And that's if you're going all the way down the avenue of like animation, but comics and graphic novels, I feel like are going to be the answer for a lot of problems that our American society has with history. But this is why books like March, right, become what they are into Run, which is the newest book that was put out. And, God bless Congressman John Lewis, who's no longer with us. But these are things that are legacy that are left behind where if you can get your hands on this stuff and you're not afraid to sort of talk about these things in respects that can at least give you some critical thinking skills. So through books like that, or even Mouse, which are controversial now, Mouse is like, really? But, you know, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. So if graphic novels are doing what maybe traditional history books may have not had enough room to fit in, well, here's the other part of the story. So so yeah, that's why I'm just so juiced about this show. Um, to be a part of it. If we can, if I'm not, just going, just to be experience it. Either way, it doesn't matter. I'm just super excited about having something like this in the DMV to kind of just showcase, because you never know how much talent the DMV has, because the DMV is not known for like art. I mean, there are a lot of things that are based here. Like we got the Kennedy Center, which has an amazing space called the Reach. But as far as like, oh yeah, no, this is a military town. Like, it's that. You got your big military companies and all of that all around.
Government, yeah.
Government, right? Who's checking for artists? Like, no, no. In sports, obviously, because you got all the major sports, we got all of them, right? Maybe not all in one city, but they're all here.
For sure, man. For sure, and I feel like that's a terrific place to cap it off. So first off, man, thanks so much for hopping on a weeknight, man. You know how it goes. Weeknights are crazy, can get busy. So I appreciate you hopping on. Talk about Farpoint and what all the awesome stuff you're doing at Artway Alliance. Can you tell folks where they can find you?
Yes, we're Artway Alliance. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Um, Artway Alliance. You can Google us and we actually come up. So you can do that now, which is actually really cool to actually be like, oh yeah, you can Google us and it'll actually come up. And so yeah, yeah, and follow us, and then come out. I always say, come draw with us. Like that's like my invitation to anybody who's an artist. And we do work with writers as well, and I am working, I guess this is something I can say, we are working with some writers to kind of put together crafting some curriculum, if you will, that would be something that could work in a convention setting, but actually be able to have a challenge to go along with it. So not only are we doing these workshops, but we're trying to drop challenges, drawing challenges, and soon to be writing challenges for people who want to get into the business, cut their chops, and enter into a contest that would challenge that skill set.
All right, awesome, man. And as always, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, which you're watching now, but also on Twitter at Move and Shake UNLTD, and me, Brandon Troy, ENT. Instagram, Movers Shakers Unlimited, and on Instagram, Brandon Troy _ENT. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks again to Eric Suggs for hopping on, and I will see you soon.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.